in the dusty corner of an estate sale in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. A forgotten photograph lay buried beneath decades of accumulated memories. The sepia-toned image, measuring 8 by 10 inches, depicted what appeared to be an ordinary school portrait from 1907. 32 children stood arranged in neat rows outside Millbrook Elementary, their faces bearing the serious expressions typical of early photography, when subjects had to remain perfectly still for long exposures. Wooden schoolhouse loomed behind them, its bell tower casting a shadow across the dirt yard. Boys in worn suspenders and patched shirts stood alongside girls in simple dark dresses with white collars, their teacher, Miss Eleanor Hartwell, positioned at the far left with obvious pride. The autumn light filtered through bare oak trees, creating a timeless scene of rural American education at the turn of the century. Local historian James Mitchell purchased the photograph for his collection of regional memorabilia, initially attracted by its pristine condition and clear documentation of early Pennsylvania schooling. But as he examined the image more closely that evening in his study, something caught his attention. In the back row, partially hidden behind taller students, stood a boy who seemed oddly out of place among his classmates. While every other child in the photograph wore the typical clothing of farming families, rough cotton fabric, hand-me-downs, and worn leather boots, this particular child's attire told a different story. His shirt was made of finer material, his trousers pressed and properly fitted, his shoes polished leather rather than the scuffed work boots of his peers. Most unnervingly, while 31 children stared blankly at the camera with the vacant expression of those holding a long pose, this boy's eyes held an intensity and awareness that seemed to pierce through time itself, as if he alone understood something the others did not. Mitchell's unease grew as he studied the photograph under a magnifying glass in the bright morning light. The mysterious boy appeared to be holding something small and metallic in his left hand, an object that somehow retained its shine and definition despite the photograph's age and the sepia tones that had faded most other details to warm amber obscurity. Consulting with photography experts at the Pennsylvania Historical Society, Mitchell learned that his suspicions were well-founded. The object in the boy's hand possessed a clarity and sharpness that defied the photographic technology available in 1907. Early cameras required subjects to remain completely motionless for several seconds during exposure. Yet this particular detail appeared crisp and perfectly focused, as if captured with equipment decades more advanced than what rural photographers typically carried. Even more disturbing was the boy's calculated positioning within the group. While the other children stood naturally where their teacher had placed them, this child seemed deliberately positioned to obscure certain features behind him. His body blocked what appeared to be markings or symbols carved into the weathered wooden wall of the schoolhouse, symbols that were partially visible around his shoulders and arms, but impossible to decipher completely. Mitchell's research into local newspaper archives from 1907 revealed no mention of any unusual students at Millbrook Elementary. The school records, carefully preserved in the basement of the current district office, listed exactly 31 students enrolled for that academic year under Miss Hartwell's instruction. Yet the photograph clearly showed 32 children, arranged for the portrait. Someone had been deliberately omitted from all official documentation, and that someone appeared to be the enigmatic boy whose presence in the photograph seemed to defy both historical record and the technological limitations of his era. The implications were deeply unsettling for reasons Mitchell couldn't yet fully comprehend. The investigation led Mitchell deep into the Pennsylvania State Archives in Harrisburg, where boxes of century-old documents held potential answers to Millbrook Elementary's forgotten mysteries. The 1907 school enrollment records confirmed what he had discovered. Officially, only 31 children attended the rural schoolhouse that year. Yet the photographic evidence told an entirely different story. Teacher personnel records revealed that Miss Eleanor Hartwell had served at Millbrook for 3 consecutive years, from 1905 to 1908, before transferring to a school district in Philadelphia. Her personal teaching journal, discovered among her estate papers donated to the archives, contained meticulous daily notes about each student's academic progress, family background, and classroom behavior. 31 detailed entries documented the children's personalities, struggles, and achievements, painting a vivid picture of rural Pennsylvania education in the early 1900s. But scattered throughout Miss Hartwell's journal were cryptic entries that made Mitchell's pulse quicken with anticipation. Beginning in March 1907 and continuing through May, she made increasingly frequent references to the special visitor, unusual arrangements made by district supervision, and confidential instructions from Harrisburg. These mentions were always frustratingly vague, never naming the individual or explaining the circumstances that had brought this mysterious presence into her previously routine classroom. Most intriguing was a journal entry dated May 15, 1907, exactly 2 weeks before the school portrait was taken, according to the photographer's receipt found paperclipped to the photograph's backing. Miss Hartwell had written, "The arrangements have been finalized after weeks of correspondence. I am instructed to include him in all regular classroom activities but maintain complete discretion regarding his true identity and purpose. The photography session will proceed as planned next month. Though I confess this entire situation makes me deeply uncomfortable and concerned for my students." The implications were staggering. Someone in authority had deliberately orchestrated the mysterious boy's presence at Millbrook Elementary, and the school portrait was far more than casual end-of-year documentation. Further investigation into 1907 school district administrative records revealed the identity of the official who had arranged the mysterious boy's placement at Millbrook Elementary, Cornelius Whitmore, a man whose professional background raised even more disturbing questions about the true nature of his educational mission. Unlike typical rural Pennsylvania school administrators of that era, usually local residents with basic teacher training, Whitmore possessed an advanced degree in psychology from Harvard University and had previously worked for the federal government in Washington, D.C. His official biography stated that he had accepted the rural Pennsylvania position to be closer to aging family members, but federal employment records told a markedly different story about his motivations. Whitmore had been employed by the newly established Bureau of Investigation, the direct predecessor to the modern FBI, working as a specialist in what government documents euphemistically termed juvenile assessment and behavioral development programs. His transfer to rural Pennsylvania had coincided precisely with the launch of a classified federal initiative that remained sealed within restricted government archives, despite being over a century old. Local oral histories recorded by the Lancaster County Historical Society during the 1960s provided crucial eyewitness testimony from elderly residents who had been children during the mysterious events of 1907. Several former Millbrook Elementary students had mentioned the quiet boy who came and went like a shadow during their recorded interviews, describing him as unusually intelligent but emotionally distant, someone who seemed to observe rather than participate in normal childhood activities and social interactions. Martha Zimmerman, interviewed in 1963 at age 64, recalled her memories from when she was 8 years old. "He never played with the rest of us during recess periods. Always stood apart near the schoolhouse wall, watching everything we did. Sometimes I caught him writing notes in a small leather notebook. When I asked what he was writing about, he just smiled this cold smile and said he was keeping careful track of important things. Even as a child, that response made my skin crawl with unease." Mitchell's breakthrough came when he discovered a misfiled document deep within the National Archives collection of early 20th century federal correspondence. A letter dated March 3rd of 1907 from the U.S. Department of Agriculture to Cornelius Whitmore discussed something called Project Rural Assessment, a classified government study examining the intellectual and social development patterns of children in isolated farming communities compared to their urban counterparts. The letter, bearing an official confidential stamp that had faded but remained legible, revealed that multiple federal agencies were collaborating on covert psychological assessments of rural American children. The stated purpose was to identify exceptional individuals who might possess untapped potential for specialized military and intelligence work while remaining completely undetected within their home communities during the assessment period. According to the detailed documentation, specially trained young operatives were systematically placed in rural schools across America to observe and comprehensively evaluate their unsuspecting classmates over extended periods. These operatives, typically selected from children aged 10 to 14 from elite East Coast families, underwent months of intensive psychological conditioning and behavioral training before receiving their assignments to remote farming communities. The mysterious boy in the Millbrook photograph fit this operational profile with disturbing precision. His expensive clothing suggested an affluent urban background completely at odds with rural Pennsylvania farming families. His careful positioning in the group portrait indicated deliberate planning rather than random placement. Most significantly, the metallic object clutched in his hand appeared to be some form of primitive recording device, technology that existed in experimental forms during 1907, but would have been extraordinarily rare and prohibitively expensive for civilian use. The most chilling revelation was that these child operatives maintained detailed psychological profiles and behavioral assessments of their subjects, systematically documenting personality traits, family dynamics, academic capabilities, and potential character weaknesses that could be exploited for future recruitment into government service or, if necessary, neutralized as potential security threats to federal interests. Using advanced digital photographic enhancement techniques unavailable to previous researchers, Mitchell finally succeeded in deciphering the mysterious symbols carved into the Millbrook schoolhouse wall that the strange boy had been strategically positioned to conceal. The markings, when properly enhanced and enlarged, formed a complex alphanumeric code that corresponded exactly to the classification system used by early federal intelligence agencies for categorizing covert operations and surveillance targets. T. Symbols read PA07MIL32A, which decoded as Pennsylvania. 1907, Millbrook Elementary Assessment Subject 32A, according to a declassified Bureau of Investigation coding manual from 1910. This designation confirmed beyond doubt that the boy's placement at the rural school was part of a systematic, nationwide government intelligence operation, with each targeted location assigned specific identification codes for comprehensive documentation and tracking purposes. Further investigation revealed that identical or similar coded markings existed on dozens of other rural schoolhouses throughout Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky, all regions specifically targeted by Project Rural Assessment, according to the federal documents. The symbols were invariably carved in locations where they would remain invisible to casual observers, but clearly visible to trained government operatives who knew exactly where to look for confirmation of successful mission completion. Local. Genealogist Sarah Patterson, who had dedicated over 30 years to tracing family histories throughout Lancaster County, provided crucial insight into the disturbing aftermath of the mysterious boy's presence at Millbrook Elementary. Several families from the immediate area had children who later disappeared during World War I, officially listed as military casualties but with no confirmed battle deaths, grave sites, or recovered remains. The Hendricks boy, the youngest Schmidt, child Martha Weaver's brother Thomas, Patterson explained with growing concern. All of them were specifically mentioned in the 1907 school documentation I've researched, and all of them simply vanished between 1917 and 1919. Their families received official military death certificates from the War Department, but no bodies were ever returned for burial. No witnesses to their deaths came forward, and no detailed battle reports mentioned their names. It's as if they simply evaporated from existence once they reached military age. The investigation took an unexpected and deeply personal turn when Mitchell discovered that one of the mysteriously disappeared children, Thomas Weaver, had surviving relatives still living in Lancaster County. Thomas's great-niece, 86-year-old Margaret Weaver Collins, had preserved a remarkable collection of family letters and documents in her farmhouse attic for over 6 decades without fully understanding their historical significance among Umau. These carefully preserved family papers was a correspondence between Thomas and his younger sister Martha, dated 1918, that had apparently never been mailed due to wartime postal restrictions. The unsent letter revealed that Thomas had not died in conventional battle as his grieving family had been told, but had instead been recruited for a highly classified government training program after military officials had identified him as possessing what they termed exceptional analytical capabilities and unwavering discretion under pressure. The letter described in remarkable detail a clandestine facility hidden in the remote mountains of rural Virginia, where carefully selected young men and women from farming communities across America were systematically trained in advanced intelligence, gathering techniques, military cryptography, psychological manipulation, and covert field operations. Thomas wrote with obvious amazement, "They knew incredibly specific things about me that I had never told another living soul. My ability to memorize entire conversations word for word after hearing them only once. How I could accurately read people's hidden intentions just by observing their facial expressions and body language. Even my childhood habit of creating detailed mental maps of every location I visited." Most chilling was Thomas's vivid description of how he had originally been selected for recruitment. "A strange boy visited our school when I was 11 years old during the spring of 1907. He rarely spoke to any of us students, but I frequently caught him watching me intently during arithmetic lessons and whenever I helped younger children understand their schoolwork. He had these unnaturally cold, calculating eyes that seemed to see directly through you to your very soul. I remember thinking even then that he wasn't really a child like the rest of us. There was something disturbingly adult about his mannerisms, too purposeful and methodical in his observations." Mitchell's expanding research revealed yet another carefully orchestrated layer to the conspiracy when he successfully identified the photographer who had created the 1907 Millbrook school portrait. Unlike the typical itinerant photographers of that era who traveled seasonally between rural communities with basic equipment, this individual, listed only as J. Blackwood in Miss Hartwell's teaching journal, possessed sophisticated camera technology far beyond what was considered standard for simple school photography assignments. Detailed purchasing records from the Eastman Kodak Company headquarters in Rochester, New York, showed that J. Blackwood had acquired specialized photographic equipment typically reserved exclusively for government and military documentation purposes. These advanced cameras were capable of capturing the extraordinarily sharp detail evident in the mysterious boy's metallic recording device, technical precision that conventional school photography equipment available in 1907 could never have achieved under any circumstances. More significantly, Blackwood's documented travel route through Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia during 1907 perfectly matched the geographic locations where Project Rural Assessment operations were being conducted simultaneously. His photography schedule coincided exactly with the communities where coded markings had been carved into schoolhouse walls and where local children later disappeared mysteriously during World War I military service. A detailed shipping manifest from 1907 discovered in Kodak's corporate archives revealed that Blackwood had received regular monthly deliveries of photographic plates, specialized chemicals, and processing equipment from a Washington, D.C. business address that was later identified through federal records as a front company operated directly by early intelligence agencies. The quantities of materials far exceeded what any legitimate traveling school photographer would require for normal operations, strongly suggesting that he was creating multiple copies of each photograph for distribution to various government officials and departments. The precise timing of the Millbrook school portrait, taken exactly 14 days after Miss Hartwell's journal entry about finalizing mysterious arrangements, indicated careful coordination between the covert operatives, classroom placement, the photographer's scheduled visit, and the completion of the psychological assessment period. The photograph was not innocent documentation of a school year's conclusion, but rather concrete evidence of a successful intelligence operation. The investigation's final breakthrough came when Mitchell gained unprecedented access to recently declassified documents from the early Bureau of Investigation's most sensitive archives. Among these previously secret files was a comprehensive personnel record for Assessment Agent 47, a 12-year-old operative whose true identity was Edward Blackthorne III, the youngest son of a prominent Boston banking family with extensive connections to federal government circles. Edward had been recruited into government service at the remarkably young age of 10 after demonstrating exceptional abilities in psychological observation, memory retention, and behavioral analysis during private testing sessions conducted by government psychologists at Harvard University. His intensive preparation included 6 months of rigorous training in rural customs, regional dialect modification, childhood behavioral mimicry, and advanced surveillance techniques before being deployed to farming communities throughout America. The metallic object clutched in his hand, which had puzzled photographic experts for months, was finally revealed to be an early prototype of a portable recording device, a miniaturized version of Edison's cylinder recorder that could capture conversations and ambient sounds for later detailed analysis. This cutting-edge technology was available exclusively to government agencies with substantial financial resources and represented some of the most advanced surveillance equipment of its era. Edwards' detailed mission reports, filed regularly with his supervisor Cornelius Whitmore throughout the spring of 1907, provided comprehensive psychological profiles of all 31 Millbrook Elementary students. These reports systematically identified exactly 3 children as possessing what the documents termed exceptional potential for specialized government service: Thomas Weaver, Sarah Schmidt, and James Hendricks, precisely the same 3 individuals, who later disappeared during World War I under mysterious circumstances. The clinical assessments described Thomas as demonstrating extraordinary memory capabilities combined with natural leadership tendencies, Sarah as possessing exceptional analytical skills paired with remarkable emotional resilience under stress, and James as showing advanced mechanical aptitude coupled with strategic thinking abilities far beyond his chronological age. Each evaluation was based on months of careful daily observation during classroom activities, recess interactions, and social dynamics with other children. Most remarkably, Edwards' final comprehensive report explicitly recommended that all 3 subjects be reserved for future recruitment upon reaching appropriate age for advanced specialized service. The revelation of Project Rural Assessment exposed one of America's earliest and most extensive domestic intelligence operations, predating the establishment of the Central Intelligence Agency by nearly 4 decades. The seemingly innocent 1907 Millbrook school portrait, with its formal composition and serious-faced children, was actually photographic documentation of a highly successful covert mission that had identified and systematically cataloged exceptional individuals for future government recruitment and service. Edward Blackthorne III leveraged his pioneering childhood experiences to become one of America's most effective and influential intelligence operatives during World War I, eventually rising to senior leadership positions within the newly formed Central Intelligence Agency during the Cold War era. His revolutionary methodologies in childhood assessment and recruitment became the foundational framework for programs that continued operating well into the 1970s, identifying and cultivating talent from increasingly diverse American communities. The 3 children he had identified during his mission at Millbrook Elementary, Thomas Weaver, Sarah Schmidt, and James Hendricks, all served with extraordinary distinction in highly classified operations during both World Wars, contributing to crucial Allied victories while maintaining complete secrecy about their true roles. Their heartbroken families never learned the actual truth about their mysterious disappearances, believing until their deaths that their children had been killed in conventional military combat, rather than recruited for elite intelligence work. Today, the original 1907 photograph occupies a place of honor in the CIA's classified museum at Langley, Virginia, labeled simply as Early Assessment Operations, Foundational Methodology. The original Millbrook Elementary Schoolhouse was demolished in 1954 during rural modernization efforts, but the carved identification symbols that Edward had been positioned to conceal remained clearly visible in the weathered wood until the structure's final destruction. Margaret Weaver Collins, now in possession of the complete truth about her great-uncle Thomas's fate, reflected thoughtfully on the discovery. While it's certainly unsettling to learn that our government was secretly watching and evaluating children over a century ago, I find myself deeply proud that Thomas served his country with such dedication and courage, even though our family couldn't know it at the time. This photograph reminds us that extraordinary stories often hide in plain sight, waiting for someone to notice the boy in the back row.